All right. Streaming is off and running. What up, everybody? Check 1 2, check 1 2. One time for your mind. It's your man Manny Faces, rocking with you one time. Streaming live Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here, wherever you're looking at me. That's where I'm at. This is the pre-show. If you've been doing this every day, you know I kind of do the pre-show, the behind the scenes as I'm getting ready and letting the people trickle in and letting folks say hi in the comment section and, you know, do all the things to get, you know, to get that coffee ready and the lunch. This is good lunchtime. I think it's a good lunchtime show. People taking lunches and they can sit back and watch us talk about some dope things about hip hop. So stick around. We're going to start the show momentarily. As you can see, it says show starting momentarily. So now you know. And hi to everyone who's trickling in. We're going to go live in a few. Please say hi in the comment section. Really good guest today. A friend of mine, someone that is doing some really, for a long time, has been doing some really innovative things in the intersection of hip hop and education. Now, a conference, a nonprofit, a lot of things that are really aligned with what we talk about here on a regular basis. So I look forward to that. We're going to start in a few seconds. The real show. Just want to say once again, hi to everybody who's checking in on a regular basis. You guys have been putting in love, sending us love just by repeatedly tuning in and hanging out with us. So I appreciate you guys. This is available as a podcast too. You'll hear me say it in the intro to the whole thing. So yeah, that's how it's going to work out. So we'll be live again in a few minutes with the show. We're getting ready to start. I'm just getting the last minute particulars all set up, and then we'll go. Say hi in the comment section so I know that I look good, smell good, taste good, feel good. You can hear me good. Say hi in the comment section of wherever you're tuned in and checking out this wonderful podcast. Live for the month of September. I'm almost done, y'all. I guess we got 1, 2, 3, 5 to go. 5 to go. So if you've been rocking with me so far, you know we've had a really great assortment of folks from all across different, areas. So I will keep it going till the end of September, and then I got some new episodes dropping. Like I got other full-length interviews that weren't done on video. So that's how it's gonna go. So all right, guest is in the green room, Mr. Doggett. What up, my man? Yeah, like I said, other interviews that have to still be finished up will drop in October once this madness is over. So, those interviews that have been kind of just sitting there, they will come. I'm putting some important links into the room here just so people can refer to them later. We have a great newsletter that goes out. It's another way to stay kind of connected to these issues. And then we're just about ready to start our. Hey, that's weird. Oh no, right. Just about ready to start. There we are. There's my live. Shouts to BS on the check-in. Shouts to Denise, New Jersey podcasters in effect. Mad love. And we're just getting our last minute particulars set up with our guest. So, and you can see who it is on the screen there. So I'm going to start the show, and then we will get situated. All right, here we go. Let's go. It's theme song time, y'all. It's time for the theme song. I produced the theme song, by the way. And yes, that is President Obama, just so you know.
The thing about hip hop today is it's smart. It's insightful. The way that they can communicate a complex message in a very short space is remarkable. And a lot of these kids, they're not going to be reading the New York Times. That's not how they're getting their information.
My hip hop will rock and shock the nation. Hip hop culture is more than music. Peace to you and speak the truth. Show 'em what peace can do when there is for you. My hip hop will rock and shock the nation. Rap is something you do, hip hop is something you live.
So hip hop didn't invent anything, but hip hop reinvented everything.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's your man, Manny Faces. One time again, live. Hip Hop Could Save America, the podcast, live for the month of September, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here, wherever you're watching me. Facebook possibly, YouTube possibly, maybe Twitch, all like two of you. I don't be on Twitch, so that's not really going to be our stomping ground. And only recently started really doing things on YouTube. So I do think that that's a good place to, number one, watch us live. Number two, check out all the past episodes. What we do here on this show is talk about the intersection of hip hop in different areas of society, including the main ones that we cover, as you know, or may not know if you're paying attention for the first time: education, science and technology, the fine arts, politics, social justice, activism, spirituality we got into during this last series for this month. So a bunch of different ways that hip hop is improving humanity and uplifting society in ways that are surprising to some, but not surprising to others. That's what we talk about on this show. Now, this has been live for the month of September and will continue until the end of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern. Of course, available wherever you're watching me. You can go back and watch those episodes. But you can also subscribe as a podcast. That way you not only get these episodes if you happen to miss them, don't have time to sit and watch the video, maybe when you're out on a run or, doing something healthy, like you could bring us along as a podcast. Search for Hip Hop Could Save America wherever you find podcasts. We have a bunch of old episodes from before the September run, just as good to listen to today as when they first got published. Very evergreen stuff we talk about here. And then, of course, we're dropping bonus episodes that are only going to the podcast feed also during this month, and then throughout the month of October once I collapse after having done this every day for a month. So I do encourage you to check out the podcast feed proper, and you'll be able to get the rest of the shows there. That's pretty much it. We do have a wonderful newsletter. If you like these discussions, if you go back and you say, oh, I love these topics, hip hop and education, hip hop and social justice, hip hop being used in, fine arts and just improving humanity, we actually curate and collect a bunch of articles from across the web. I don't know anyone else that does this, so we kind of just find them and put them all together because they're from different sources. Very, very often not from hip hop media sources, actually, which is another conversation. But we'll curate those, collect those, pop them in a newsletter, deliver them to your email inbox for free. It's called the Hip Hop Advocate. It's just a cool newsletter. A lot of great stories about, again, hip hop being used, to help youth and help older people and help people and throughout the world in all kinds of ways. Again, hip hop is uplifting humanity or improving society. You can subscribe to that and find out anything about all of this either at hiphopcouldsaveamerica.com or the Center for Hip Hop Advocacy, which is hiphopadvocacy.org. And lastly, if you do feel like supporting this work, there's a lot of technical mumbo jumbo and subscriptions and assistance and paying for things, it kind of comes out of pocket. Every little bit helps. Patreon.com/MannyFaces to help with this and some of the other things that I do. You can find out more about me at MannyFaces.com. But enough about all of that. It's not important. It is important. Not as important as the guest. The guest is very important. And this guest in particular. So as you can see on the screen, we are still kind of touching the area of intersection between hip hop and education. Particularly as it relates to the organization, which you see there on the screen, the Hip Hop Association of Advancement in Education, which is helmed and operated, for the most part, by our wonderful guest, Dr. Tasha Iglesias. Welcome to the show. Let me get you on. Say that again.
I said, thank you for having me, Manny.
It's a pleasure. It's good to see your face.
Right? Be better if it was in person.
It would be better. It would be better. We haven't been in person in some time, but we'll get back soon, I'm sure. I hope all is well and, as can be under the circumstances with you and your family.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, we're plugging along, doing what we can. Distance
Zoom
learning, Zoom life, distance learning, the whole thing. Kindergarten is crazy. But it's good to have you here. We've known each other for a while. I've followed your work for quite some time. You've always been sort of an inspiration to me, and someone that's out there, talking the talk and walking the walk at the same time, being kind of one foot in, hip hop ethos and one foot in academia, making sure that, those lanes cross properly, merge, correctly. So just so that some people know who might not know who you are, if you could just real quick, briefly, kind of how do you present yourself to the world professionally, who you are, what you do. I know you wear a lot of hats. You got a lot of things going on. You teach 19 or 37 classes. But generally speaking, who the hell are you?
Yeah, generally, right. I'm still trying to figure that out. That's funny. I actually had a professor when I was in a doctoral program said, "What do you want to do after you graduate?" And I'm like, What do you mean when I grow up? Is that what you're asking?"
Yeah.
But I'm very fortunate. I do wear many hats. I am teaching 10 courses. So I am an adjunct faculty member for the University of California, Riverside, where I teach education, hip hop, and sport. I teach sociology courses at Fullerton College, online Southern New Hampshire University, and at San Diego City College. I guest lecture all the time. I love doing that because I get to meet new faculty and meet new students across the world. I'm the president of the Hip Hop Association of Advancement in Education, chair Global Conference of Hip Hop Education, and multiple other fun things. I'm on a board for the AERA Hip Hop Special Interest Group. So basically anything I can find to be a part of, I try to give whatever I can give and be involved in that.
What were you very, again, touching tentacles all over the place in education. What did you come up studying? Like, what did you want to be before you knew what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I knew that I always wanted to be an educator. So when I was young, I wanted to go into special education. So I actually went to Cal State San Marcos to become a special education teacher, which I'm grateful for because you learn how to teach in such innovative ways for all kinds of learners and to make it interactive and accessible. So I think that helped with my foundation. But as an undergrad, I majored in women's studies and liberal studies, minored in sociology. So I got 2 bachelor's degrees. But at the time, I was a union organizer for the faculty. And they asked me to get people to vote and get them engaged and go to rallies. And so I started bringing kind of my community on campus. So at the time, I was a promoter for underground hip hop groups and reggae groups. So I would bring artists on campus to register people to vote and realize that people were more excited to be engaged when there was music. And the artists talked about lyrics. And I ended up throwing the first jam at Cal State San Marcos that included all elements. But it was women in hip hop. So that was kind of how I started. But then I became a union rep and negotiated for like 10 years.
Wow. So very early on, sort of the mixture of, hip hop, artistry, creatives, education, activism, all swirled up into one.
Yeah. I mean, there was never really an opportunity for me to separate any of that, I guess. I just, part of my being was that I always wanted it all involved. So I guess all involved. Yeah. Right. At the time, I didn't know that. Right. But for me, it just made sense because it was my culture and it was what made me excited and happy. So I made sure to include it in my work because, I had that flexibility.
That's what I think. And I'm often trying to, what I often say here is I love the people who don't know anything about hip hop checking out this show and understand, hip hop and education. What does that mean? Do we just teach, rhyming words, cat with hat and, da-da-da. We do that. No. It's obviously way more than that. But, and again, that onion peels to layers.
Oh yeah. That's a whole nother podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's multiple iterations of, this one. Everyone has their own kind of rabbit hole of how you can use education, hip hop in education. But at the same time, that's what's really great about it is that at the same time, it is social justice. When you're using hip hop pedagogy and we're using, kind of these tools, culturally relevant, culturally responsive, all these things, it's not just educating to educate, but it's educating for equity.
Right.
So they're always connected.
Yeah, and I think that, and part of it is it's the spirit. It's kind of the foundation of hip hop, is that you go into the culture and engage in the culture to become a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that's very tied to, you know, social justice and advocacy.
Yeah. Um, what along those paths in teaching, how have you been able to, obviously you're teaching courses that are actually like hip hop courses. So
Yes.
there's two lines of thought with hip hop and education. Is hip hop as a tool for educating, which we talk about a lot here. But if you could just talk about the classes you teach that are actually hip hop, you know, or hip hop history or hip hop, sociological aspect, the actual courses that are about hip hop. What do you?
Oh, yeah. What do I do with that?
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate. So at the University of California, Riverside, I was invited to come teach and help create, co-create a course. It's called Education, Hip Hop, and Sport.
Right.
It's cross-referenced between the education department and a new sports management degree at UC Riverside. So the students that I get want to be educators or they want to go into sports management. In that class,
when we talk about intersections, this is a great
right.
Right.
And at first it was very hard for me because of the title, Education, Hip Hop, and Sport.
Right.
I don't say it overtly and explicitly in the beginning, but by the end they're able to say, I have a hard time with breaking being considered a sport when it's a cultural expression. But I understand how it can be a sport, and I understand that hip hop impacted sports, NBA, college football,
Right.
you know, you could go down the line. So you're able to see intersections in regards to the sports aspect of it, but in the education and leadership portion of how we actually teach and learn and mentor others in the hip hop culture, I'm able to teach that so then they can go forward, whether or not they're going to become a teacher or a manager, are able to utilize what they learn in the values and the norms within the culture and be able to apply that in their professional lives and personal lives.
The life skills that it
right. Yeah. So that's my baby. I call my baby my special course. But this semester we'll be teaching it online. So I'm having to wrestle of what hip hop pedagogy looks like in an online environment. Because it is so in person and it is so full of activity and movement. So I'm gonna wrestle with that and do my best this term to recreate that.
And I wonder if I had I think Dr. Nate Novato on yesterday's show. Same topic came up. Like, how do you going online teaching is difficult enough, but if you're a lecturer, it's it's not too much. I mean, I went to college for 26 minutes, so don't take this wrong. But what's the difference? You hear them talk, you hear them talk in person, whatever. Hip hop, or classes that have that kind of they're fueled on the cipher. They're fueled on the back and forth, the meet students where they are. But also, so it's difficult. I get that. But also, when you come at it from a hip hop angle, the hip hop way of doing things is never the only way of doing things. Like, we figure it out, we smack it, flip it, and rub it down, and you know what I mean? Like, find out a way around it. I think that maybe gives an advantage at some point to try to adapt. Do you think so?
Absolutely.
The creativity of it all.
And I was just on a I don't know what it would be called, but like a Zoom. I did a panel session, and on Saturday morning at 5:30 in the morning, because it was 9 o'clock in the Philippines. But I had 50 people from the Philippines be able to attend this Zoom panel and be able to ask questions that they can use in their country. And so when I think about what online learning does for access, for people to be able, like I have groups in Cuba that now are able to access the internet and for the first time actually hold Zoom conferences, and that part of it is very amazing to be able to connect with people in the culture in different countries that typically you can't really reach in person. So there's ways to do it. We're gonna do it, and we're just figuring it out, because normal online teaching looks very different than in person, but also the research behind it is kind of limited in regards to culturally sustaining and engaging pedagogy. So we'll make it happen and probably document it, because we need to.
Well, that's important too, to find out what works and what doesn't. Some of that stuff, it helps because you're all kind of doing work. You meaning like sort of hip hop based educators, this movement, this practice, are doing things that are still kind of, I don't say cutting edge. I mean, it's been going on for years and years and years, but it's also good to document and make sure that because what I often find is that people who want to dip their toes into this need to rely on the documentation of others who have done it before them. So that's super
Yeah, a
important.
little bit. Yeah.
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 And no, I was gonna say, you talk, what helps with what I know you to do and what others I think to do when we do this successfully or authentically or whatever you want to call it, is the multi-element aspect, bringing in different aspects of the elements. Again, something harder to do when you're remote and such. But talk about that for a second, the importance of, and how you may, maybe some quick anecdotes or whatever, but mostly the importance of making sure that when hip hop is represented in academic circles, that hip hop doesn't just mean rap, and certainly doesn't just mean rap on the radio. How
Right.
important is all the elemental aspects to the cause and to the mission?
Oh, incredibly. So I think a lot of the research and a lot of what people say, that when they say they're using hip hop pedagogy, I think they're using rap pedagogy. Rap pedagogy is just the analysis of lyrics, lyrical creation. You could talk about music production. And whenever I read different articles, chapters, books, I feel like mostly what they're talking about is rap music.
Yeah.
It's also one of the barriers that we face when we try to talk to academia about hip hop, because that's the first thing they think about.
Right.
So it's very unusual for me to find content that is representing a culture that I engage in. So breaking, graffiti, and expanding that out. Nate Novato does that. Me and him use the same conceptual framework, with Terry Asso's cultural wealth model. So we really look at not only teaching the history of hip hop or, lyrical analysis and creation, but just the idea of how the different elements can be used to apply. So even with, let's say graph artists, how you could use that in a math course or to teach math, looking at, the spatial characteristics of a place where you're going to paint, how much paint volume, so you DJs talking about how you contact a venue, a organizer, or promoter, and negotiate. So negotiating skills. So there's all these things that happen in hip hop behind the scenes, behind the art, that involve planning and knowledge and wisdom that's passed down, the style of teaching, the idea of ciphers. So I think that at this point, we're seeing a lot of academics, and they're kind of all, it seems like around my age, because we were able to engage in the culture as young adults, teenagers, and continued to engage in the culture and then entered academia. So I think that makes the difference a little bit of, rather than coming into academia and then coming and dipping into the culture. Right.
Indeed. That's important. I think we've talked about it offline. I've heard you talk about it a lot. Again, having practitioners or people that are of the culture be at all the tables.
Because, absolutely.
Yeah. Now that you teach at 738 different places, do you find do you find that obviously you're working, so people are pulling you in, but from a kind of overall holistic view of academia as a whole, I know it differs and you have to go to different places and such, but over the years that you've been doing this, how has the attitude changed towards hip hop, whether it's rap pedagogy? By the way, I say the same thing about people who call themselves hip hop journalists.
Yes. No.
But that's
the podcast, I can say it, but it's not the culture to isolate what you're saying about the entire culture just to one element, and even that element is being controlled by another entity. So you're excluding, anyways. Yes,
well, you trust.
It's important,
right? That's what I'm saying. So yes, but so how do you see that being handled? Like I say, holistically throughout the industry, throughout the academic, industry, as it were. You're getting less pushback. Are you finding more opportunities? Are you surprised? Are you discouraged? generally.
Yeah, I'm so, ooh,
Yeah.
all these emotions. So I had to hire someone to start scheduling me. So I've been getting, I think, meeting with one or two people at least a day, in different countries, different institutions, being asked to consult, review curriculum. I think a lot of different countries are looking at developing hip hop majors. Um, so that is fascinating to me. I know the Department of Education is now taking an interest in offering hip hop as a continuing education or career technical program.
Right.
I've been approached by districts to think about how hip hop can be used to meet ethnic studies requirements. And then in college in the United States, more courses being offered,
Right.
and again, seeing it being offered cross-discipline, which is also important.
Right.
Because I don't think hip hop should be isolated in African studies or ethnic studies. I think it has a place because it's one of the most listened to genres across the world. And now we're seeing people participate, and then breaking coming, well, in the Youth Olympics, and most likely going to the world, the main Olympics in 2024. So you're seeing a wider acceptance, more knowledge. There's more documentary. That's a whole nother story too, with documentaries and historical accuracy. But you're seeing more knowledge and more, I guess, openness. But it's still, when you're talking to people without it, the first thing they default to is bad rap lyrics they've seen in popular media. So
that very cursory, very tunnel vision view of what we're all about. I want to talk about the next iteration of what you're doing that isn't in the classroom. If anyone's just tuning in, checking us out, I'm here with Dr. Tasha Iglesias, good friend and a big advocate for hip hop and education and hip hop, just advocacy. Doing all the right things. Shouts to Natalie Crew on the check-in. Yeah. Shouts to Eddie Obando, everyone else checking in. Please say hi and communicate with us. I will shout you out. Isn't it great to hear your name on the radio? This is Hip Hop Can Save America, the live version, Mondays through Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you're watching me, and also available as a podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. hiphopcansaveamerica.com for all the info, and shouts to Funkadelic Studios sponsoring this aspect of the show. New York City's very finest midtown rehearsal and recording space, back open and safe and disinfected and UV rays to kill all the COVIDs. And some musicians in New York City now have a place to go back and, get all that angst out. So shouts to them. So speaking about New York, I think is this supposed to be happening in New York, this whole conference thing? Let's talk.
I guess we can talk about that now. Yeah.
Let's talk about the organization again, and I'm putting it on the screen here for those watching. And I'm on the wrong screen for those watching. Look, there's a lot of things going on here. People watching, I'm.
Hey, your ability to manage all of this is highly impressive, I must say.
The Hip Hop Association of Advancement and Education. You co-founded, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about this organization, this nonprofit, why it exists, what it's here to do, and then we'll get into the kind of first grand housewarming, the conference, so to speak.
Okay, sounds great. So, gosh, when I first went into graduate school, I knew that I wanted to start a nonprofit. I just didn't really know what that looked like. So a lot of my work in the beginning started with foster youth out here in Orange County, recently and released previously incarcerated foster youth, and helping them get into college. And I realized that, offering a space that was comfortable for them was a lot better. So we did hip hop events, and we were able to have conversations about college that way. It was a lot more receptive for them, rather than doing a workshop with a PowerPoint. Right. So that got my wheels turning, I guess. But one of the things that you have to look into when you start a nonprofit is they're like, is someone else doing the work? And I started realizing after doing research, I was working with volunteering with Generation Hip Hop and the Universal Hip Hop Museum. I realized there are people around the world that were doing this work. They just needed the support and they needed the network, because there were just all these talented people I wish I knew more of when I was in a doctoral program. I felt very alone. I didn't want people to feel alone in this work. And I wanted them to know that support existed out there. So we created this organization. Monk, who's out, he's with All of the Above. He's on the board. He's out in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's a DJ, graph artist. He's an advocate, works with youth. Dr. Michael Dando is at St. Cloud University.
Yes.
Really looks at popular culture. His work is like super fun.
Yeah, we're long overdue to talk.
I think everything's fun, right?
Yeah.
So Dando Sikajipo out in Florida is our director. He works with a lot of our international organizations. Cindy Macias out in, she's over by me in LA, former student. And we have our treasurer, who's actually my father. He's the most strict treasurer ever. What you need, right?
That's
down
what
to
you
the
need.
penny.
That's right.
But we wanted to create a space where we supported artists, educators, organizations that were using hip hop to empower their communities. So we've looked at different opportunities, whether it's in health, foster youth, I mean, you name it. Where does hip hop have potential to empower vulnerable, underrepresented populations? We want to go there and support them. So building cultural centers, all of it.
Yeah. Very important work. I have my own nonprofit. I know how hard that can be. It's still very nascent. It's where this podcast is housed, the Center for Hip Hop Advocacy, which has some, similar DNA, but I think different missions overall. Very complementary though. And I think that's what this is all about and I think we've always gotten along is always just like, hey, what are you doing that I can signal boost?
Right.
What can I add to the mix? Even though it's not my organization, it's not my thing. I don't work at your college. You don't work for my podcast, but how can we amplify? And that's very communal and community building. And that's what hip hop is great for.
Absolutely.
I think that what organizations like yours and in part, mine and the work I do and others that we know and love is that the strength of hip hop is based in community, but the power of hip hop, it can come from constituency. And that's, I think, what's still missing link from the hip hop nation, so to speak. But I think that part of that is because of what you said. People feel alone. There's a lot of different factions. People are working in small bubbles or in small regions, and there's no network. There's no connection. There's very little philanthropic support.
It's fascinating because in several other countries, you see government support, you see United Nations support, but I don't think we're really having the conversation together on, what exists or what organizations are willing to support us and how did you approach that, so that kind of social capital we need to expand. So that's really the focus of my organization is to really kind of go in there and help people that are using hip hop succeed because, I'll succeed if you succeed, really. And it takes all of us on all fronts to do this work. So and the other thing that we're doing, obviously, is a global conference on hip hop education.
Yes. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That's been in the works for some time. Obviously, again, education focused, even though, as we talked about in the beginning, all these things kind of spill into each other. All the advocacy work, all the social justice work, education, counseling, all these things kind of. The Global Conference on Hip Hop Education, tentatively, I guess, are still kind of figuring out how it's going to happen. Was going to happen in February in New York City. What was the idea for the conference? What was what are some of the tracks or, focus areas that this conference is one way or the other? I would imagine still going to happen. Yeah.
It's still going to happen. And I will make the first announcement on that on this show. But going back, when I went to conferences, and it kind of goes back to an earlier thing you brought up of not really seeing hip hop represented in academia. So I would go to these conferences and they would be talking about hip hop, but I didn't recognize the culture they were talking about.
Right.
Not always people's faults, especially if, you're a tenure track professor, you can't, I don't know. I just think it's important to be at a jam, at a graph yard, DJ battles, MC battles, different, it's just really important. It's my family. It's what I love.
Right.
So to see people talk about it that have never seen engage in it, there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
So also thinking I'm surrounded, it's like an echo chamber. And I'm not seeing the people that started the culture or are part of the culture in these rooms having these conversations. We're talking about them as if they're just kind of
Right.
they exist. So I wanted to
And
create a
talking about them
space.
as if they're dead, and they're not. Like a lot of them are.
Right.
They're here.
They're like, oh, and then when I tell them, I said, oh, have you tried talking to so and so?
Right.
And never reached out, never tried. But I wanted to create a space where it didn't matter what your educational background was, that you could come and participate and enjoy this conference, because I've found that I've learned more from sometimes the practitioners, the people that are doing the advocacy work in the culture that may not have a degree, but have spent decades doing this work and changing more lives than an article, right?
Hello.
So but there's also the importance of academia, because if you want to go for funding, if you want to go approach these organizations, they're going to be like, what's your data? Prove it.
Right.
So we have to work together. And we have to make sure our voices are speaking the same language too. Right. So I created this conference, and I went to ASA College, and I sat down with them, and I was like, there's Christian and like I'm forgetting their names right now. It's horrible. But the two faculty over at ASA College sat down, and I told them about this conference. Of course, I'm super passionate. I'm like, it's going to be the best thing ever. And they were like, okay, you can use our entire institution for free. And I just sat there in disbelief. And then COVID hit.
Right.
So I didn't want to do an online thing because I was worried about hip hop pedagogy online. And then realized that with sometimes obstacles are presented for a reason. And I was sitting down with my partner, and he's like, well, what happened if you did online, but now you can, have live ciphers from around the world. Now more people can come. And I was like, oh, so
right. It is a global, it's supposed to be a global conference.
Right. And I'm like, oh, geez, duh. Right. So, so now for this year, we will be going online. No one's heard about this yet, but we will be going online. Manny's going to help us be kind of our host of the conference. And then next year we'll come back to ASA College, hopefully in person, but we are expecting a second wave. Europe is being hit right now. Most institutions are now announcing that they'll go back online in the spring. So I want to be able to hug people.
Yeah, I'm a hugger. It's the worst.
I'm a hugger.
It's the worst for us huggers.
Yeah. So, I don't want to have to create an environment where you can't have the cipher because you got to stay 6 feet away, and we can't have, these events. So I am stretching my boundaries, getting ready for an online platform. So it looks like it'll be New York the next 2 years, coming to the West Coast. So we can explore some West Coast history, probably with Nate up at, I think it's Skyline. And then, and I think it's Oakland, and then come into possibly London in 2024. So we hit when the Olympics come, and hopefully breaking is in the Olympics.
Yeah, that'd be a great reason to go. If there's never, there's always a reason. You need a reason to go to London. I mean, but that'd be nice.
It would be great.
All about intersections. It's going to be great. Look, as we said earlier, because we don't take, the road most traveled in hip hop, it's fine. Like we'll flip it and make it something spectacular regardless. And I think that that's where we have a leg up on a lot of folks that are trying to figure this out. They get frantic in it because it doesn't fall into the framework of how a conference planning should go. It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out.
And it's the spirit of it, right? Of kind of creating with limited resources. But in this case, we have quite a few resources. Luckily, we have a whole institution backing us, and a 39 proposal or 39 presentations.
Yes, and I've seen a couple.
Yes. Anywhere from
good stuff.
B-boy workshops, which I think is going to be fun. Right, I've never been to a conference. So we have a B-boy workshop. To punk rock panel. So looking at the intersections of punk
Sure.
rock and hip hop, I mean, I
It's always
opened
been
it
there.
up. We have many different tracks just to allow that creative space just
Yeah.
to see all the different ways that hip hop is being used across the world. So it'll be amazing.
Yeah, I'm just going to read it. Again, subject to change, but I think some of this is pretty set. Track information from the
Yes.
website. We shared the link. Literacy and language development through hip hop, hip hop cultural appreciation, pedagogy, and praxis. So again, the in practice use of this stuff, not just theoretical, how it's being done, how it's being used. Empowering marginalized communities, obviously one of the great strengths of hip hop to be able to do. Entrepreneurship and leadership in hip hop. Musicality in hip hop. I talked to Dr. Jared Steele on this show. I talked to a lot of people that, I was just looking at something that Ethan Hine did where, hip hop music gets treated as music. And that's a beautiful thing. I love when that happens. We need more of that. And then that track you talked about, hip hop education and sport, which is just another great, again, to us, not so strange, but to some people, surprising way that, these areas can mesh well and improve humanity, improve the lives and career paths of young people, and do all the good things. So really fascinating wealth of information to be showcased.
Absolutely. And that was picked by kind of our stakeholders, people in our group, these different tracks. And I wanted to make sure it was representative of the people that originally were part of this creation of this organization. So it's been amazing just to see what can result when you include people from the culture to create these things. And it's not a lot of hard work if you do that, right?
That's what's true. We're all doing what we love, and it's one of those things. So it's not like you have to rope somebody in and say, "Look, we're doing this hip hop thing," and you're like, "Well, I teach this other thing, but I guess I'll," no, it's what we do. This is our thing. Yeah. Well, that's why I love you and I love your work.
I love you too.
Thank you. And it's because of that. It's because of always giving myself. Like I said, I went to college for 26 minutes. Why should I be involved in something like this? Because we recognize the contributions, not shared knowledge, experiential knowledge of everyone out there. That being said, this is the smartest hip hop podcast in the world, and that is in no small part to folks like you taking the time to share your ridiculous amount of information, knowledge, perspective, and experience. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I thank you for doing all this work. So we've put the links up at the Hip Hop Association of Advancement and Education. The links are there. Please have people get involved. You can register for the conference now. You can sign up, obviously, or contact the organization to get either involved or just, make sure you get more information, reach out and speak with you. If anyone can contribute ideas or suggestions or, just praise. We all love praise. You can affirm us. It's fine. And is there anything else that you got lined up, coming up that people who have just sat here and listened to us for a little bit would be interested in knowing about?
Oh, God. We have a lot.
Yeah.
We're right now what we're looking at, and we'll be announcing the details soon, is a hip hop scavenger hunt. This will be for either young adults, teenagers, whoever wants to be involved with it. We're going to do it over the winter break, so people have something to do, but it'll involve workshops, but also trying to go out in your community and find items or images or engage in the culture and then report back. So we'll open it up around the world so people can see. And then, you get a medallion at the end. We want to do a video and that'll be in the conference. So we really want to use that way, the online platform of being able to get people to engage in the culture and see how it looks in different regions across the world. So that's one of the things we're working on. The other thing I cannot announce yet, but we got a lot of things coming up, so make sure to follow us. There's some, I wish I could announce everything, but you know how it is. You have to wait until you have informed all parties and have dotted your I's and crossed your T's.
It's just an excuse to have you back. It's no problem.
I'm excited.
We'll come back anytime and tell people about it. All right, very cool.
When you're ready.
We'll follow the organization. We'll follow yourself. Where can people find you online? That you prefer that they keep an eye on you. Do you do the onlines? Do you do the socials?
Yeah, apparently I'm on Facebook, but all the young people are on Instagram. So we have some social media interns that are going to help me stay up to date. But we have our website, hhaae.org. It's relatively new, so we're still building it. So if you're a web person, let me know. I need help. But Facebook, we're using a lot. That's what I'm most comfortable with, but we will be expanding that social media presence out.
Very cool. I encourage people to pay attention. The Facebook presence, there's a Facebook group that's public, right? That Facebook group.
Yeah, anyone can add it.
Yeah, which is great because again, you and others who are in that group, it's become sort of a repository for information. We find something cool going on in the hip hop related world. Someone drops it in there. I share a lot of stuff from there. And again, that's the whole thing. I find stuff there. I share it over here. You take stuff from me. It's fine. It's great.
Yes.
We're all, because we want this stuff to get out there. The organization is great for that. The conference is going to be great for that. And you are great for that. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you
for finding time to go live. We went live. How crazy is this?
I know. Are you going on vacation in October? Is there some kind of reward for what you're putting? Because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Hawaii in December. So
I'm not doing Hawaii, but the second this show is over, I'm going away for that first weekend and just decompressing.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so it'll be the first weekend in October. I'm going to take it. I also moved at the beginning of August. I'm a glutton for, like, I don't think pandemic life is complicated enough. So why don't I move and then I'll do a show every day?
Okay.
I'm a madman.
This is why my grays are coming in. But hey, it's fun. We enjoy it, but
we do. But we need a break, and self-care, obviously. We know is important, and we hear about it all the time. But yeah, a little break after this, and I'm gonna regroup and see. This thing went really well, and we had a lot of great conversations. And I do encourage anyone who's listening who just caught a piece of this, run it back. Get the whole thing and then go back through, and you could binge, the whole month's worth of stuff. If you liked this at all, you'll love everything we're doing here. And once again, thank you, Tasha, for coming through. I miss you.
I miss you too, man.
We'll see you soon. Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully. So
I'll just come out there and talk to you 6 feet away.
We could do that too. So
all right.
Anytime you're around. All right. We will catch up soon offline and tackle that other endeavor.
The beast. That's going to be a beast.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you the next day or two. Feel free to hang out in the background or just, cut out and enjoy your day. Thank you once again. All right. Be safe. Be well.
You too.
Dr. Tasha Iglesias from the Hip Hop Association of Advancement and Education, and I think 76 different colleges. So thank you, Tasha, for your time, and thank you all for checking out another edition of Hip Hop Could Save America, the live version. Y'all might be hearing they decided to, of course, do some kind of construction-y things right now of all time of the day. So if you hear anything in the background, I apologize. Meantime, in between time, I'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Wherever you're watching me here, you can find the old episodes. So if you're on Facebook, you'll just, look for videos. They're all there. YouTube channel's there too. So if you prefer YouTube, we're there. And of course, as a podcast, super important that if you like this discussion, if you like anything that we've been talking about this entire month, super important to get those podcast subscriptions. It's free, obviously. Even if you don't really listen to podcasts, it's really not your thing. Just go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you might have an app that does it. Look for Hip Hop Could Save America. And subscribe there. So please, as a podcast, that's very helpful because we're going to be putting out stuff that isn't in the video. Again, after this month, taking a little break, might come back and do these again. The podcast feed's going to remain active. And I don't want people who've been watching the videos and like, oh my God, this is great. Oh, he's so handsome. And then you get a chance and then you think I just stopped doing it. We're still going to be doing the podcast feed. So please do check that out. And once again, yes, if you want to buy a cup of coffee, proverbially once a month, hey man, patreon.com/Manny Faces. It does help support the costs of this situation. I'd love to be able to do it more. I'm trying to expand it. We're trying to move it to a bigger platform. But as folks who have donated to the cause before know, and I said everything that gets blessed us with gets used for these new things, and then I came out with new things. So I keep my promises. Patreon.com/Manny Faces. Once again, thanks to Funkadelic Studios. Sponsor and friend, New York City's finest in recording and rehearsal space, opened and safe, and know how to disinfect and keep everyone under capacity and apart and everything. So Funkadelic Studios, I know musicians have been itching and aching to get back out there to at least rehearse and record. You can do that at Funkadelic Studios. And the world-renowned, multi-award-winning podcast Newsbeat, which merges social justice journalism and hip-hop, very often with original lyrics by independent artists that tell a story and bring issues to light in a compelling, creative way that no other podcast and no other news organization can do. Newsbeat is the 2018 and 2019 Journalism Podcast of the Year. The Society of Professional Journalists PCLI Awards was also the 2018 New York Press Club Podcast of the Year. So a journalism podcast that talks about social justice and got a bunch of rappers in it was the best journalism podcast of the year at the New York Press Club, which also has entries from, I don't know, like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg. And so, yeah. So again, on the podcast tip, do check out Newsbeat. I'll put it in the chat, Newsbeat, usnewsbeat.com. And you can subscribe again, wherever you find podcasts, look for Newsbeat, 2 words, Newsbeat, a social justice podcast. It's super dope because it's got kind of hip hop DNA and hip hop roots and a hip hop feel. And but we tackle a lot of issues. We just released an episode today or yesterday, which is a bonus sort of update on the disenfranchisement of felony voters in Florida. A whole voter suppression thing that's been going on in Florida for a long time. In 2018, there was a vote that let felons in Florida regain their voting rights. Florida is one of the few states that after you become a felon, after you serve your time free and clear, you're not able to vote ever again for your whole life. There's a couple states that do it. Most states don't. And once you have with a felony conviction. So legislature wasn't fixing it. Government wasn't fixing it. The people kind of petitioned, got it on the ballot as a referendum. I forget the exact word. But basically the majority of the state voted that once you're done and once you're free and clear as a felon, you can vote in Florida. Great. Florida's a swing state in every election. Bush versus Gore. It's been a whole thing. So they say, great, that's cool, that's fair. I think that's fair. You pay your debt to society, you're able to vote again, that's cool. And then, of course, the Republicans said, nah, here's the rub. You have to pay off any fines that you owe. And a lot of people who go through the court process in Florida pay fines, court fines, fees. You get a parking ticket, it's $45, but then you have to pay a $25 surcharge. And you're like, what? That's $45? Why? And you just pay it and you get it. But of course, people who go to jail and serve years in jail, I think the first concern of theirs isn't like, let me pay that $800 I owe the court. You know what I mean? So you get out of jail, you're free and clear. You may still owe some court fees, but you can't vote, so whatever. Now they say you can vote. Then they say, but no, you got to pay back your fees. So what do people say? Fine, what do I owe? And then Florida says, we're not going to tell you. So, but how do I know what I got to pay so that I can go vote? You don't. You don't know. And there's no obligation for them to do so. So all these felons, ex-felons, free and clear, pay their debt to society, free members of society, no restrictions. By vote, the majority of Florida said, yuck, a vote. And then Republicans said, no, you can't. And so there's a whole thing now with that. So that's voter suppression. It's not just as simple as polling places closing in minority communities, which happens also. Anyway, I say all that to say this, a little tangent, but the Newsbeat podcast, which I'm a part of, and was on this show. So go back a few episodes and find out how we're talking about social justice through a hip hop lens. We've been on this because we reported on this in 2018. And we've had updates on the podcast, on the Newsbeat podcast, with all the changes, with ups and downs. So social justice, if that's your thing, and why shouldn't it be, and you want to get it in a compelling, kind of non-cable newsy way, and something that actually comes from the soul. We have producers, we have artists that are independent, rappers that spit lyrics based on the topic that we're covering. So we get a deeper understanding of it through hip hop. So shouts to Silent Night, shouts to Liquid, shouts to Rebel Diaz, Rabbi Darkside, Osiris Anthem, Indicana, Cruise Control, Napoleon a Legend, all the artists that we've had as part of this partnership. So the Newsbeat podcast, it's just one of our sponsors, but it's really a partner, and it's an organization that I'm the producer, I'm the host, I'm the editor, and I'm the music liaison of that. So if you like this, trust me, you'll like that. Anyway, cool. Thank you for rocking with me. I really do appreciate your eyes and ears. If you have anything to tell me, you can reach out, hit me on whatever your channel you find me. Just hit me. I'm always down to talk. You can email me, you can DM me, whatever it is. suggestions. We have more guests coming up. But if you know someone that you think should be a guest, you go to hiphopcansaveamerica.com/guest, and you can recommend a guest, even if it's yourself. And then we're going to keep this going live on these videos until the end of the month. And then keep it going on the podcast feed. So once again, Hip Hop Can Save America, the podcast, wherever you find podcasts. My name is Manny Faces. Thank you for rocking with me. Thank you again to Dr. Tasha Iglesias, an inspiration and a valuable member of society, doing all the good things in the name of hip hop. So that's it. I'll be back tomorrow, y'all. Peace and love. Thanks for watching me.